The number of roguelites seems to be increasing exponentially, with top-down, third-person, first-person shooter, and 2D platformer variants being represented here with a mega list of 50 games, beginning with Realm of Ink, one that has an Eastern theme with a sick-looking, almost calligraphy-type art style, with the character finding out that she is but a character in a novel and fights against her destiny and looks very impressive. For obvious reasons, there have been a whole bunch of Vampire Survivors clones, so I'm intentionally limiting the number of these that I cover since I too am getting sick of them, but GUNRUN looks to be a little bit of an exception since it just looks like pure chaos, which I love. Masses of enemies, masses of bullets, and you have the recipe for fun, with the overwhelming number of enemies really looking like quite the challenge. This video is brought to you by Dungeons Anima, an action roguelite that uses a trope which I thoroughly enjoy in games in the reversal of roles, since you play as the last undead foot soldier guarding the dungeon of your fallen master and have to fend off invading enemies, collect their souls, and reclaim your dominion against the human empire. The unique twist about this dungeon crawling title is that there are 15 playable classes to unlock, and more interestingly, allows you to choose any 3 per run and to seamlessly swap between them, with the given example being warrior, archer, and sorcerer, so I have no idea how that is going to be balanced, which means it's a curiosity. Furthermore, there is an elemental system in which the style and elements of every ability affects the others in a rock-paper-scissors kind of way of strengths and weaknesses. The minute-to-minute action looks great as well, in part due to the medieval steampunk world, and also has 4-player co-op and meta progression from run to run, so there's plenty to love about this title, so if interested, play the demo on Steam and wishlist the game. It's been a while since we last took a look at Rogue-lite Darkest Hours, a top-down action title that is a mix of a survival, crafting game with a roguelite, and yes, while similar enough genres, being a roguelite does structurally affect the title, with the game having the tagline "A roguelite where the island hunts you" and sure seems intriguing. Here's a game which is new to the channel in Tax Force, a roguelite platformer with a comic book art style in which you're hunting down tax-evading mutant billionaires and seems to have interesting ideas. Another roguelite of potential is Ants Took My Eyeball, one that feels similar to Vagante in the character proportions and general grimdark vibes. You either play as a miniature human or are a regular human fighting giant-sized bugs, having to descend into an anthill and fight your way to your eye that was stolen. The action looks fun and has a demo available, with the developers tentatively placing a 2024 release window, so I hope it makes it to release. We are kind of spoiled for choice when it comes to roguelite first-person shooters, but it's difficult to tell exactly which one will take off, with a promising entry being Abyssus, a title that has you exploring an ancient underwater civilization in order to uncover its secrets. The old-school diver helmet-based character designs are neat, although it does the annoying thing of adding punk to a theme, which seems kind of meaningless, since this is supposed to be a brine punk title, like in the saltwater solution, so I have no idea what that means, but the variety of weapons seems nice and co-op is an added bonus. An impressive looking pixel art action roguelite title is Ending Touhou, set in somewhat of a post-apocalyptic situation in which you can willingly accept curses which will mutate parts of your body in order to gain the powers necessary to fight off your enemies. It does have a village building meta progression layer, which I always love in games, and is drawing upon Native American folklore, which is neat, in which there are 7 god fiends that you need to defeat and is one for fans of the genre. An interesting looking action roguelite title is Emberville, a game in which you're helping the citizens rebuild their town as you delve into the ever-changing dungeon to battle monsters and then return to upgrade, with the life sim elements being of interest. Just a quick one here in Touhou Blooming Soul, where I'm always on the lookout for Touhou games which are not the classic bullet hell titles, in which this game appears to be a boss rush action platformer with bullet hell elements. You're battling various characters from the Touhou project, but I don't really know why and don't really care, since the action looks great with a ton of variety in attack patterns, not to mention gorgeous pixel art as well, so I'll be interested to see the structure of the game.
宇宙は危機に瀕している。巨大な悪が今ある全ての惑星の崩壊を引き起こしている。全ての命の崩壊。危険、狂気、最後の決戦の時が来た。
Wanna get weird? If the introduction didn't already give it away, the Cabbage Effect looks like it's one of the strangest titles ever, having all sorts of surreal imagery and character designs. It's an isometric action roguelite in which you traverse through psychedelic landscapes and fight all sorts of weird enemies such as a giant slice of cake. But despite the Japanese voiceover in this trailer, it is not from a Japanese team, but rather two people out of Brazil, but I have to say, they have nailed what they are going for.
進化、パワー、過去、未来、狂気。
Monkey roguelite platformer is probably the main appeal of Dunjungle, in which you play as an ape, which is the protector of the jungle, having to eliminate anything that threatens the peace. It's monkeys all the way down, along with what appears to be a bunch of weapons, enemies and bosses, and although there isn't a specific mechanical gimmick, if you like monkeys like my daughter, this will be of interest. 2023 has been a year of fishing, with another game that is going for that same thing being Lake of Creatures, a self-styled fishing roguelite in which you're battling mutant fish in order to save the lakes, having catching fish as one of the main mechanics which I always love, but am curious as to how this will be balanced with the combat. A couple of rapid-fire ones here, beginning with Touhou Red Empress Devil, a top-down action roguelite with bullet hell elements and Touhou characters, so I'm interested to see the gimmick here. I came across Neko's Rage on Twitter and wanted to help the developer out, since this pixel art action roguelite looks alright, in which you play as a cyborg in an apocalyptic world with a planned release for 2024 as well. From the developer of Bald Angry Guy Punching Stuff comes younger Bald Angry Guy Punching Stuff with cybernetic enhancements, in which KIBORG comes to us from developer Sobaka Studio, who made Redeemer, which is great, changing up the camera from a more top-down style to third person behind the back with brutal looking action and seems neat. Here's a game which I almost put in my upcoming games like Diablo video, but then noticed that it was a roguelite, so into this pile Crawlyard goes, a real-time isometric hack and slash title that has deck building elements for some reason, so it might be a little bit more strategic than your regular old action RPG, but doesn't tip over the edge into becoming a full strategy roguelite, which I'll cover in another video. An intense-looking action roguelite title is Demon Spore, one in which you're attempting to escape a laboratory in which an experiment has gone very, very wrong, leading to the creation of a rapidly growing thing that seeks to consume all. The interesting part of this game is that I believe there's no way to permanently kill the monster, in which you can use experimental sci-fi weapons to shoot at it to temporarily slow down its growth so that you can get to the next room, with the procedural generation of levels and the dynamic path that you have to take being of interest. A very anime all-action title is Endless Alice, a third-person action roguelite that just has explosions, rockets, lasers and numbers flying out of everything everywhere, so much so that I don't really know what is going on, but it looks pretty intense. Another game which got me due to the art style alone is Mobspawn, an isometric title in which you're attempting to ascend the floors of a company and fighting enemies along the way, in which you have a vacuum pack that can suck in and use the environmental objects as projectiles and looks awesome. I'm not quite sure how developer Pocket Pair is doing it, since this Japanese developer has multiple projects ongoing at the same time and might be a not-so-indie larger company despite being technically independent, since they have their ongoing updates for Craftopia, the upcoming monster taming third-person shooter Pell World, and also Never Grave, the Witch and the Curse in development. This is a Roguevania title, where it still feels weird to me to be saying that term, in which you play as a witch who wears a cursed hat, adventuring into dungeons to get resources to upgrade the village, having an art style that does suspiciously look like Hollow Knight, but is fairly well done, and I wouldn't consider this to be a clone. Now this title is a little bit further out since Whisker Squadron Untitled Space Game is targeted for 2025, in which developer Flipfly, makers of Race the Sun, appears to be focused on Whisker Squadron Survivor at the moment, which is still in early access, although the Survivor in that is thankfully not a Vampire Survivor style game, where I think that this title was supposed to be the main game with free roaming of the universe as compared to the on-rails nature of the other game. An interesting roguelite shoot-em-up title is Rabbit and Steel, coming to us from a developer that specializes in this type of game, with the interesting twist here being that it has a co-op focus and aims to replicate that experience that you would have in a high-level MMO raid, meaning that different players have to all play their roles, but with the bullet hell and shoot-em-up twist instead. Here's an interesting title since RAM, Random Access Memory, doesn't even have a player character, where you instead play as a consciousness that can take over enemies' bodies, transferring from one host to the next. As such, it's a different kind of roguelite for sure, so I'm curious about the progression system, if there is one, on how you can get stronger. Here's an awesome roguelite platformer titled Sinus, a cyberpunk action title set against the backdrop of a sentient AI that is hell-bent on turning all humans into data, where based on the trailer and the Steam store write-up, I'm a little confused as to whether you're fighting against the AI or are the AI instead. Interestingly, on top of the side-scrolling shooting action and all the roguelite trappings like loot and upgrades, it does have more immersive sim elements like being able to hack into turrets, hack into enemies to turn them on each other, hack upgrade stations to boost the power of the upgrades and more, with of course the pixel art visuals speaking to me. A game which is releasing very soon is Go Mecha Ball, an isometric roguelike title in which you play as a creature in a mech with the ability to roll up into a ball, which not only increases your speed, but does also have special abilities associated with that, as well as being able to use the environment like ramps to get around, as well as pinball physics to attack your enemies, having an awesome look as well. Here's an interesting roguelite title since Furcifer's Fungeon looks like a classic action title but is an auto-scroller, so there are no traditional rooms or arenas in which you're just continually moving forward and coming into conflict with enemies. Dizzy Rogues was such a game from 2023 that played with this concept, so I'm interested to see what they do since the developers talk about playing as a necromancer duck, so I'm all in on that. Things seem to have been looking up for the developers of Elsie since they signed with publisher Platonic Friends and also The Completionists. Okay, never mind then, since that has probably halted his involvement in the game, in which this roguelite platformer seems to have gotten a visual update since we last saw it and looks pretty good. The gimmick here is that you're able to use a bunch of drones and robots that orbit your character, which fire off their own attacks, where the more you get, the more chaotic the action. That looks pretty good to be honest, so let's hope they manage to sort out whatever trouble they have with development. Honestly, I'm not sure if Rogue Soulstone is this developer's priority right now, since, like many roguelite developers, they pivoted and released a Vampire Survivors style title named Soulstone Survivors in 2022, which is doing very well for them, so I'm guessing the quote-unquote main game is put on the back burner for now, which is a shame since it looks kind of like an MMO and might be a pretty unique take. This game is on the list because of how novel and weird it is, in which Motordoom combines an arcade sports title like Tony Hawk Pro Skater with shooting and blood heaven type action, in which enemies swarm you from all sides and you need to take them out. If the gratuitous gore and explosions didn't already give it away, this does seem awesome, having at least 4 characters that I can see in this trailer, including a regular human guy, a demon, a jester, and even 2 skeletons, one of which is riding in a sidecar attached to the motorcycle and just seems awesome. Developer Ghost Ship Games of Deep Rock Galactic fame is leveraging the success of their Horde survival extraction game and are moving into publishing and expanding their scope, with Deep Rock Galactic Survivor being the Bullet Heaven spin-off of the original, in which there is a mining element in addition to fighting off swarms of enemies. I'm not sure how familiar you folks are with the streaming space, since I've noticed that the crossover between YouTube and Twitch is rather distinct, so when I talk about Donkey and Big Mood Publishing, I'm sure that you'll be aware, with this next game being published by another influencer-led group in OTK, with of course Asmongold being the largest name here, so it certainly is interesting from an industry perspective, in which Atomic Picnic is a third-person action roguelite that looks kind of neat. I mean, I believe you can see the Fortnite influence on this game, but it's a fully co-op experience and looks well made, with the developers themselves being based in Brazil, which has produced many great indie games. Here's an awesome action roguelite that comes to us from friend of the channel Crunchy Leaf Games, in which Galactic Glitch Infinity's Edge is an arena action title that has physics in space, which is the main draw. The bubble area can be thought of as the play area, but its elasticity can be used to advantage. For example, you can grab an asteroid and fling it into the wall, and then slingshot it back at enemies, looking to have a high skill ceiling as you have to master this, but you can also use your gravity gun equivalent to rip out enemy cores, or to catch enemy projectiles and throw it back at them, being an all-action title worth a play, so check out the demo and wishlist the game. You might have come across this title while on YouTube, since developer Luke Muscat has been absolutely blowing up, being one of the main people behind Fruit Ninja and Jetpack Joyride, who has gone full indie and is now making and experimenting with games quite publicly, in which Feed the Deep is an underwater title in which you are diving in to get treasure and then returning to the surface to buy upgrades, and looks kind of like Gatekeeper, so I wonder what the gameplay loop will be like. Here's an amazing looking action roguelite title in Gatekeeper, a title whose prologue demo has been very well received, in which you're attempting to find the heart of the universe which has been stolen. You're blasting away at a larger than normal number of enemies, but it's not a straight up Vampire Survivors clone, which I appreciate, with it having multiple characters as well and might be going for a Risk of Rain vibe. The developer of Swordcery did reach out to me in 2021, and even then, I thought that it looked promising, being an action roguelite in which you wield spellbound blades, mixing both melee combat and magic to great effect. This comes to us from ex-AAA developers who worked on God of War as animators, now having gone full indie, in which games take time to make, but the developers are posting updates on Twitter, so the game is still in active development. Here's a title that is new to the channel and standalone, in which I'm already on board due to the opening seconds of this trailer, which starts off right smack in the middle of the action, so indie developers do take note. It's a pixel art title in which you play as a sheep in a sci-fi apocalypse, wielding a great sword and fighting off wolves, having fantastic pixel art, and it's going under the radar all things considered, so do drop this one a wishlist as well. I was wondering what happened to this game, since Wraithbinder is the next game from Wizard Fu, the developer of Songbringer from 2017, which was an interesting procedurally generated action-adventure game that wasn't exactly a roguelite, with this new game appearing to be a more fully fleshed out one of these. It has Metroidvania-style progression in which abilities gained during a run will allow you to access new areas and might be more akin to Dead Cells despite the top-down view. The pixel art here looks great as well and has a Q1 2024 release window, so I hope it releases soon. I covered Odin Fall in my video on the best upcoming pixel art games, in which you are slaying robotic Norse gods in this hectic action title. The interesting part of this is that you're able to modify your weapons to try and find the most overpowered combination, where if the success of games like Magicraft is anything to go by, this should be a good game as well. I'm a little skeptical on this one since Wizard of Legend 2 is the follow-up to an awesome pixel art roguelite title, but is taken into 3D, in which some of you in the comments have said that this looks like a mobile game, with the other area of concern being that it's with a new developer, but this team made Children of Morta, so I'm cautiously optimistic for now. Here's a new spin-off title in 20 MTD Ember Path, which, if you're not familiar, refers to 20 minutes till dawn, but anecdotally, from the footage, I don't really see what's different, since this looks very Vampire Survivors inspired as well, but due to their reputation, I hope they can make something fresh. Surprise! We have not one but two Deep Rock Galactic spin-offs in this video, with Deep Rock Galactic Rogue Core being a co-op roguelike first-person shooter, and critically has Ghost Ship Games itself listed as the developer of the game. You're exploring a mining facility that has gone dark, delving deeper and deeper underground to find out what happened, being able to return to your ship after the successful completion of a mission. So, I don't know, it seems very similar to the original, but I have faith that they can make something interesting here as well. A lot of fans are not happy with the state of Risk of Rain, since the two-person team sold the IP to Gearbox, who straight up immediately went to make a mobile gacha game, and I fear Hyperlight Breaker might have the same fate. Technically, this is from developer Heart Machine, who made the adored Hyperlight Drifter, but in between that game and this, as well as during the development of Solar Ash, the team has scaled up and changed a significant number of personnel, so it's definitely not the same team making this game. Rather than a 2D Zelda-style title, this is a 3D action roguelite with procedurally generated open worlds and looks like it has good combat, but it feels like they're going for a Risk of Rain 2 vibe and structure, which, granted, has been very successful, but I don't know about the fate of the franchise in the long run. A newly announced title that is definitely of interest is Wild Bastards, the sequel to Void Bastards from 2019, but takes the roguelite first-person shooter immersive sim into a space western kind of setting instead. Yes, it does still have the first-person combat and a similarly amazing art style, but the variety of biomes and missions look impressive, in which you're leading your band of outlaws in search of loot and treasure. Here's an intense pixel art action roguelite in Storm Edge, in which elemental storms are occurring and are threatening the world, and you, as a member of the Guild of Mages, must attempt to stop it. The intense action is the main draw, in which you must dodge and weave through attacks and environmental hazards, with there being multiple playable characters for variety, where there is a demo available, so go try that if you're curious. A beautiful roguelite is Yasha Legends of the Demon Blade, a Japanese-themed title set in a fantasy version of Edo, Japan, in which our heroine is battling demons with the ultimate goal of defeating the nine-tailed fox. Since we last took a look at this game, the developers have revealed more information, such as there being multiple playable characters such as an immortal ninja, a demon emissary, and a monstrous samurai, with the art style seeming to have influence from Japanese paintings as well, and looks great.
We're looking for hands-on management-type industry rock stars, hungry to disrupt the dominant paradigms of intra-office upward mobility. Are you a team player? Ready to join our success-oriented thought leaders in open collaboration?
Developer Free Lives is one of the most versatile groups in indie games, which I believe might be due to how they are structured, with smaller teams working on individual projects, with Stick It to the Stickman being a roguelite brawler that looks neat. While it uses Stickman, there are a variety of weapons and abilities, such as a Hadouken or a chainsaw, with this trailer even showing off an isometric camera angle, so there's more to it than meets the eye. It is of course being published by Devolver, so the quality should be there, where I loved those Flash games and Flash animations starring Stickman back in the day, so this appeals to me. Surprise! Some of you might not be familiar with this developer and thus might not have expected to see Metal Bringer here, in which this is the follow-up to Samurai Bringer, only instead of a feudal Japan kind of setting, it is full-on sci-fi instead, in which you can pilot giant customizable robots and has their signature art style which looks pretty slick. Of course, the sequel to one of the most popular roguelites is of interest in Streets of Rogue 2, with the original being an open world sandbox that is kind of like GTA, with the sequel taking things even further in that direction, and might be less of a roguelite, but there is still procedural generation of the world, and the developer does highlight an endlessly replayable roguelite formula with RPG elements and immersive sim creativity, so I'm including it here for now. One of the newly announced titles is Windblown, and while we don't get that much gameplay, what is there looks great and is of course from the developer of Dead Cells, which makes it of note, and has quickly become one of the most anticipated indie games. No prizes for guessing which title comes in the number 1 spot, since as a Hades fanboy, I was so excited when Hades 2 was announced, primarily because Supergiant hasn't made a sequel ever, but I guess the massive success of the original made them change their minds, so I do wonder how this will be different, especially given that it will be an early access release. But they are pretty much 4 for 4 on their previous titles, so I'm not worried. I'm guessing this might be 2025 Game of the Year, with the possible 2024 Game of the Year being in this video, so watch that to find out.